And so I had never worked with local police officers. In those cases, you really work with the FBI and the IRS, other federal law enforcement. And so I hadn't worked with local police officers, and I also hadn't encountered people like our victims. Instead, my experience had been with people that abused their authority, whether it was business executives or politicians, people that had had all the advantages our society gives someone, and yet had nonetheless chosen to break the law. And in prosecuting people like that, you have to overcome a jury's tendency to really give them a great deal of credit. And that also happens with police officers. So what we had to do was first figure out who we could believe, and then figure out how to bring a jury on that same journey. And those were two, very different tasks. For me, a moment that I describe in the book, when I remember having the visceral feeling that what we were hearing about was real and was really happening, was when we heard from two victims, Herbert Tate, one of whom I mentioned, and then another victim named Antonio Santafel, who had been robbed on back-to-back days in November in the same East Baltimore neighborhood. And they never met one another. They didn't know each other, but they described essentially the same conduct by the police officer that had robbed them. And as we were getting ready to have Santafel testify, he had told us that he worked nights cleaning office buildings. And as we were getting ready to have him testify, I left him in a witness room to wait, and I came back to get him, and he had fallen asleep. And I remember thinking, if this is a man that's about to lie, he wouldn't have fallen asleep. And it wasn't just little tells like that. As I said, it was the pattern we saw of so many people describing what had happened to them in incredibly similar ways. It was those jail calls that they made